Hey, good afternoon, EXP family. I hope you're doing well. And I've been thinking a lot about you because when we start to think about everything that has happened post August 17th, right? Some people are calling it Realtor Y2K. Okay, cool. What I know is this: we are a long way from being done. That was just like the beginning of our new next. And what's so important about where we're headed together is how we prepare our clients to make the best decisions for their families. And so I'm super excited today to bring to you opportunities as we dig in with our sellers. And so really this is all about empowering your sellers. We're going to look at strategies and negotiating tactics as we move through this next chapter that is our industry. So let's get started, shall we? It's going to be a lot, and definitely if you have questions, go ahead and drop those into the chat box. I'm going to do my best to answer those as Randy and I tag team taking care of you. All right, here we go. So when we start to look at the here and now, this is absolutely a professional's market. Consistency is absolutely key. Service, communication, and showcasing the experience that you bring is going to allow you to grow your business and take care of your clients at the highest level. This is the here and now, and this is how we move forward. So let's talk about prepared success. See, when we start to look at how we show up for our sellers, I want you to continue to think about your benefit to them. See, the benefit of hiring a professional agent in every transaction absolutely meets the seller where they're at. When you think of your value proposition, value is inherently yours, but you're only valuable when you match your value to the benefit on behalf of the client. So when you start to think about your benefit proposal to a client, it's about setting expectations and what it means if they choose to work with you, how you show up for them in the transaction, what they can expect, what experiences you've had that can help them negotiate smartly, maybe navigate challenges in the market that are unique to where you live and practice. But also the people that you work with, right? Like who's the team around you? Could be your title in escrow. It could be the attorney that you refer to. It could be, appraisers that you tap into, or members of your true team if you're a team leader or a member of a team. See, when you start to look at real estate, we are not just on an island taking care of a client. It's a total village or community helping to support moving that client to their next. And what we're finding right now is some folks are rate locked, right? They got in on that beautiful rate at 3.5. Anything under 4 is like outstanding, ridiculous. We won't see it again in my lifetime. This is what's so important. We are seeing people start to move now because of family and very deeply personal situations. And so as a result, how you show up is going to be huge, but how we communicate, because what happened during COVID when they bought is not where they're at now. They've had experience. They want to see more communication. They need that follow-up. Things are taking a little bit longer, right? And so as you look at days on market, it's not days, it could be weeks in some instances. Those follow-up conversations that you have set people for success. What does it look like to work with you? And then the other thing that is so interesting, and we're seeing it more and more right now, is past client reviews. You go to dinner, you're looking up, hey, did people like that new restaurant? You're getting recommendations by crowdsourcing. And it's still the same when it goes to work with an agent. Even if this is somebody you've worked with time and time again, they're going to be checking up. Hey, are you still engaged in the market? What have other people said? It reinforces a decision that somebody has made, that they made a great choice in picking you as their agent. So when you go out to take a listing, it becomes so important that you have all these tools at the ready. Now, the other thing I want to empower you on is you are absolutely more than marketing. A lot of people think they can put a sign in the yard, throw it on the internet, and life is good. It's not just about, hiring a professional photographer or maybe getting a floor plan mapped. How you show up as far as your strengths and market knowledge, what's going on in product, what's going on in both resale as well as new construction, what are trends that you're seeing, what are common issues coming up in home inspections. And then, oh my gosh, let's talk about appraisals. Has anybody not had an appraisal come in yet? you have the skill set to walk people through what that looks like. And it becomes really important that we talk about not just the pre-marketing, right? That decision to list and at what price and setting that strategy, but then how you show up starts to look at, okay, contract to close. When you get that first purchase contract and you're negotiating it with your client and you're implementing the strategy of what are we going to do? What makes the most sense? Because sometimes we're not just selling on price, we may be selling on time, but more on that in a minute. And so when you start to look at how you work, the biggest change that we're seeing post August 17th is we want to empower you to focus solely on the fee that for your service. When you go meet with the seller, the fee you're negotiating is yours alone. You're going to fully encapsulate how you work, what you work for, why you get paid a certain amount, whatever that looks like. I want to empower you to negotiate your fee solely. And when you look at your fee for service, that's why the EXP listing agreement, we were so specific. The listing broker compensation, this is about you determining your fee for service with the client that's in front of you. And it could be a range, right? You may be doing an exact amount, a dollar amount. It could be a percentage of the purchase price. It's up to you to determine what's best fitting with that client's need. And so you can move forward. Now, this is the thing. What we're seeing in the market is a little bit of a hangover from what was previously. Used to be, we would go in and negotiate the total package, right? Both our listing fee as well as a buyer side fee. The mindset shift here is so critical because as we look at post August 17th, that decoupling of the commission, really focusing on, hey, it's just me. You're hiring me. Let's go to work together. And this is what it means to you. You're paying my fee. But then you start to set the seller up for success on, hey, buyers in our marketplace, they may ask you to contribute or be a part of. What does that look like? And so now you've locked in your fee for service, but then you get to talk about strategy of negotiation with your seller. I hope that makes sense because as we go through this next few months together, there is a lot of confusion out in the marketplace. And what I want to make sure that you are so empowered with, that you're so rock solid, is this is who I am. This is what I charge. This is what I do for you if we go into business together. This is how I get your house sold. And we make a plan along the way. That power, that confidence that you walk in with is making all the difference in the world. Now, what do sellers need to know? Let's break this down because when you start to think about what's going on in the market, and we're starting to see some shift nationally. We're seeing inventory climb in certain areas. We might have a little bit more product. People are starting to move either for very personal reasons, usually family, maybe health, maybe a job, those types of things. So what's happening locally? And these are four kind of big buckets I want you to dial in on. What's happening locally? Are you seeing concessions? Buyer compensation, is that common, right? Do you have a lot of VA buyers in your area? Great. You may see a lot of people requesting sellers to pay compensation to a buyer's broker. Okay, that's not uncommon. And so this is where you have an honest, empowering conversation with your seller of what to expect. The other thing is property condition expectations. Now, this is something we haven't had to have a conversation about in a while, right? It's like, hey, this is the house, floor to ceiling walls, buy it or don't, let's go. This is the difference. See, what happens now is we're going to be talking about what's the condition of the roof? How old is it? How's the flooring? How tired is it? Does it have that dog smell? How's the landscaping? Why is there a dead tree? You know, all of those things that maybe during COVID or during that run up of the market, people were like, yeah, take my money, I want your house. Now there's a little bit more discernment, maybe not a whole lot yet, but it's been interesting, especially as you speak with first-time home buyers that are maybe that younger generation. And what I mean younger, I'm saying younger, the Gen X, which is me. Okay, so our millennials. Our millennials are quite discerning, right? They've been watching HGTV. They've watched the different home shows, and they're saying, hey, Why is it like that? I actually had an agent in one of our states come to me and say, I had this guy who got a home inspection back, and the roof was the home inspector said, "Hey, roof is good for the next 6 years." And the buyer freaked out and said, I need a new roof." The buyer's like, "But you got 6 years useful life. You may not be in the house that long." And the buyer's logic was this: I want a new roof because if I'm here longer than 6 years, I don't want to pay for it. So, new roof or reduce the price. So, that longevity of being in the house is absolutely happening. What are your current trends you're seeing local? That hyper local focus is becoming huge. Now, this is also where I start to shift. Who's your buyer? Because that's also quite local. Are you seeing move up buyers? Are you seeing first time home buyers? Are they getting VA or they USDA, FHA? What is their loan type? Or are you seeing a whole lot of cash? Folks, I'm in Arizona, so a lot of folks coming in from California. They're selling a property in California, getting a ton of money that allows them to buy cash in Arizona. Okay, great. What does that mean? So, what kinds of financing is happening? Because that may impact how the buyer negotiates and that mindset. Also, back to concessions. Are they looking at, contribution to closing costs? Are they looking at, hey, I need certain repairs done, whether it's termite or HOA, and the property condition continues to rise. Now, market adjustments is something that I want us to be all hyper aware of. We've seen the interest rate start to come down here the last few months through the summer, and we're probably going to see the Fed make some moves here as we go through the fall. It's important for you and I to understand what's going on locally, but what also is happening to our feeder markets. Where are most buyers from out of area moving from? What are their market impacts? And so if you're working in a luxury market, like just outside of Sedona, Arizona is where I live. In Sedona, for the longest time, I was watching luxury markets that were Napa Valley because we saw a lot of people who were coming from Napa or high-end areas in California that would have a second or third home in Sedona. What was interesting about that is when I saw a depression or slow of inventory in Napa, I knew that was going to trickle down into Sedona. So it's important when you start to look at your micro market, what's happening? Are you seeing people still move from out of state? Are you seeing that slow? And this is a couple ways to check that out. One is talk to the Chamber of Commerce. Where are most people moving from? Second is look at, I absolutely love census.gov, gives us a lot of really good information. And then finally, call a moving company. Where are they seeing out of state transition coming from? It's really interesting because those are seasonal weather patterns of where people move, how they move, and what that looks like. And they can give you some great insights. Those are wonderful pieces of information to have as you're talking to sellers, would-be sellers, even your database. If you're making phone calls and you're like, yeah, we're actually seeing more people move from this zip code than we had in the past few years. That's a cool stat to share. Now, interest rate, of course, we're always going to be watching, but also inventory challenges. Are you seeing certain markets or certain inventory types increase or decrease? What's interesting in talking with people in Central Florida is we're seeing an increase of condos, just a lot of new condos coming on the market. So they almost have more inventory. And that may not be true in your local zip code in Florida or your local market, but being aware of what's happening in maybe, touchstone markets just out 100 miles away could be impactful to what's going to happen to a house you list this afternoon. Now, the other thing I'll say is everybody wants to be a real estate expert. And there's a lot of really bad information out there, especially surrounding the antitrust settlement. And everybody loves a cocktail stat, right? They go to a party and they think they're a real estate expert. That's cool. Why not myth bust? One of my favorite things to do is give people facts that overcome what they perceive as challenges. And so a lot of times people right now, or at least 6 months ago, they're, oh, my house will sell itself. All I need to do is put a sign in the yard and away we go. Oh my gosh. But your daughter wanted, Barbie pink bedroom last year because Barbie was the rage. We might want to paint that. How buyers see homes is also changing. Please educate your sellers that buyers, in order to see a house, as a real estate agent, I'm going to have them sign a buyer broker or a single property buyer broker to be able to open the door, so I'm in compliance with new rules in our industry. Walk people through what they can expect. Hey, open houses, do they work in your market? I know some markets I've worked in personally, they were fantastic. Like, oh my gosh, totally got buyers, was able to sell the house, amazing. I've had other markets that I've worked in where the open house was the perfect time to spend quality time by myself. It just depends. Educate your sellers on what they can expect. What does it look like? Are they going to get drive-bys? All of that. And some people out there still believe never take the first offer. It depends. Sometimes the first offer is your highest, sometimes it's your best, sometimes it's the only offer. So, what makes sense? And these are all things that, as you're looking at how do you set your seller for success, if you're getting ready to go on a listing in the next couple of weeks, I really want you to start to have answers for, hey, how would I answer these questions? How would I overcome concerns that somebody might have? It makes a difference. Now, these are some scenarios I love kind of role playing and thinking about, and I always did this when I was on a team. We would talk about what does it look like, and so when I would go out and set the stage with the seller, the one of the questions I always loved asking was, hey, are we selling, and what's more important, time or money? And some sellers will step back and they're like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And I'll say, well, look, this is the thing. If we're pricing for time, we may need to be a bit more aggressive, right? We may not be able to wait for the highest dollar amount because it may take a little bit more time. That being said, if we are pricing for money, we need to be as close to where we think we're going to sell without going over. What are our most recent comparables in the neighborhood? And making sure that we're spot on with the most buyers that we could see that are either getting financing or paying cash. When you price for time or money, the longer you're on the market, usually, and we're getting back into that stage of, if the house is on the market more than a certain amount of days, some people ask, what's wrong with that house? And so in their mind, they're already doing discounts, right? It's kind of like day old donuts. You don't pay full price. So as a result, the conversation you and I get to have with the seller and setting them for success as we look into a more equilibrium market. And again, I may see some really super hot markets on the West Coast, whereas portions of the East or Southeast maybe is slowing a little bit. Instead of 2 weeks on market, we might be hitting 2 months, 3 months. And that's not a bad thing. We've enjoyed a very healthy seller's market for the last few years, but for the most part, it's been predominantly even or buyer's market for the last 20. So how do we have those conversations with our sellers? Now, the other scenario I love having a conversation around is right buyer, right strategy. And this is really important as you start to have the conversation about, hey, seller, who do you think your buyer is for your house? And not like, what do they look like and all of that. It's more, are they a move up buyer? Are they a first time home buyer? Are they paying cash? Are they an investor that's going to come in and maybe do a fix and flip because you haven't updated since the 70s? All of those things become really important as we talk about pricing right. In this market, it's so important. And I know a lot of us are still looking at August 17th and everything that we've been on in this crazy roller coaster. When you understand the right and likely buyer for your listing, it helps us overcome all of the new rules that were set into effect on August 17th. See, if I know my buyer is likely a first-time home buyer, potentially FHA, the conversation I'm going to have with my seller is, let's be prepared that the buyer may be cash poor. They may need some assistance in financing their compensation to their agent. We may need to walk them through how to do this. They may ask you to pay directly. So what does that look like? How do we do this properly? And again, this goes all to the net of the seller. We may, if we've got to buy a house that's more ideal for, let's say, an investor, okay, maybe I'm not worried about them paying compensation to a buyer broker. Maybe that agent who brings that buyer, they've got some sort of deal worked out with their buyer, and we don't have to worry about it, but they're looking for a deal. They're looking for a lower price because they're going to have to invest in the property. All of that becomes really important as you strategize how we are going to get this house sold. It's all big pieces of the puzzle. Now, Claude, I love this question. How do we navigate an unrepresented buyer who wants to put an offer in on your listing? This is what's so fascinating, Claude. There's a lot of conversation right now that we are thinking we'll see more unrepresented buyers. The key to this, first, do you want to represent that buyer? If you're the listing agent and your seller said, yep, absolutely, you can represent that buyer, you've got to have that permission first in writing, but I digress. You would then, set up for that as far as your agency, etc. But if you are only going to represent your seller and you're focused on that, we have created a form at EXP for you, and it's a disclosure of non-representation. You would give that to the buyer, say, look, hey, I recommend you get representation. I'm not going to represent you, but I can help fill in the blanks of this offer and get it presented to the seller, and you can move forward. Now, this is the thing, y'all. Make sure that you are doing your best to continue to encourage people in writing. They should go get representation. It's in their best interest. A real estate transaction without representation, can you do it? Well, sure. But we don't see many FSBOs on purpose. We don't see a whole lot of unrepresented buyers on purpose because it is complicated and hard and long. And so as a result, having a trusted professional by your side makes a difference. So if you have somebody like that says, nope, I'm going to represent myself, cool. Then please sign this form that is the unrepresented disclosure. And you can find that in SkySlope. Then you can fill in the blanks, but you can't give them a CMA. You can't tell them who to hire for the home inspection. You can make sure the house is open, but you're solely representing your seller. It's a tricky, tricky thing. And Claude, if you're ever wondering, please reach out to your broker team so they can take care of you and walk you through each step. Now, mindset in a changing market, it becomes really, really important because things I want you to think about is the psychology of the seller. And again, the last few years, things went so fast during COVID, like people made the decision to buy, but they usually knew where they were going and it just boom, boom, boom lined up. Now, everything is a bit more thoughtful, a bit more intentional. There's time to think. And so as a result, we may see seller concerns that we haven't seen in a while. Some sellers right out of the gate, they're like, I don't want to undervalue my house. I want to make sure I get top dollar. I will say this, I've seen some prices come down on homes. I'm seeing price reductions in some areas from anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. It's a big deal. Also, we've got folks that have lived in their home during a very eventful time. Can we call COVID an eventful time? And so there's some emotional attachment there. Their babies were homeschooled there. Their family came together and that was their safe place. So when you start to look at that mindset of selling right now, something that they had as their safe place during COVID, that's a pretty significant mindset shift to let go of that beautiful safe place. And then timing for sale. How long is it going to take? Am I going to be okay? Where am I going to go? These are psychology things that I want you to be aware of as you go have conversations. Now, some folks have moved through this. They're like, nope, made a decision. We're moving here. We've got a job, spouse, health, whatever it might be. But then you've got other things that may pop up. So this is what I would say. Always balance with facts and come with the data to support it. The best thing you and I can do during this time is setting expectations of what they might be able to expect next. So undervaluation, let's talk about the CMA. Let's look at showing traffic, because if your showings are down or there's no showings, the market has spoken and it's telling us very loudly we may be overpriced. Also, have your needs changed? When you look at a seller's motivation of why they are selling, bringing them back to that core why. Why is it so important that you move? Because I'm here to help you do it, becomes just so important. Now, focusing on their current and future needs. It's really easy to look in the past and go, oh, this is where, our kids came home and they studied at the table, and, I had my son doing PE in the living room, and our daughter was doing band at the kitchen table. Yeah, thanks, COVID. All of those things were happening. Focusing on their current need that, hey, the kids are going to college. We don't need this biggest space. We actually need to go and be closer to the new job, whatever it might be. And then finally, when you look at timing, it's all about updating scheduling and what the process is. Is it taking longer to get an appraisal? How long are escrows happening right now? What are you seeing? We're not closing in 2 weeks. Maybe we're closing closer to 30 days. That kind of follow-up makes a huge difference for sellers to understand what to expect and how to go forward. Now, I wanted to give you some strategies. And this is what I appreciate as you start to look at what we've done both historically, but also in this new chapter of our industry. When you start to look at seller market strategies, this is where we're at. We're right on the bubble, right? So leveraging market data for competitive price, right? We're going to set it based on comparables. Now, I want to give you some different questions to ask your seller. Like, hey, wouldn't you agree that based on our price, current market trends, it puts us in the best position to attract competitive offers? Like, you lay it all out. This is kind of a presumptive close. It's a great question to ask, kind of a good script to use, right? Then you start to create that sense of urgency, right? You're talking to a buyer, maybe you're doing an open house, and it's like, hey, we've got an open house this weekend. If we receive multiple offers after our next open house, wouldn't it make sense, you buyer, to submit your best offer now? Because if I've got an agent who's like thinks the buyer wants to write an offer, I'm going to tell them about the open house this weekend. It's all about creating that momentum. And then again, I always want to look at negotiations. I'm going to focus on value and not always price, because sometimes when you're selling a property, it's all about the total package. The recent upgrades, the proximity to work, neighborhood, all of those things. How do you see it meeting your long-term goals? These are amazing questions to be asking both the buyer's agent, both anybody who's walking through an open house. It kind of helps to frame things. Now, negotiate terms, not just price, because some people will come in and they may be willing to offer full price, but man, they need to close in 2 weeks, and your seller needs 60 days, and they'll turn that offer down. So one of my best things that I always love doing is anytime I got an offer, I'd call the buyer's agent, say, thank you so much for your offer received. A couple of quick questions. First, what's more important to your buyer, timing or price? And is there anything in their offer that they can't live without? Like, I want to know what's in your offer. Like, is there anything in here it's like a must? Sometimes it's the refrigerator because they don't have one. I'm amazed at how many times people will pay $5,000 more because they get to keep the refrigerator. Always ask that question. And when you start to look at how you strategize, how you have these conversations, it becomes really exciting as far as holding firm and when you compromise and what to compromise on. Because again, going back to that refrigerator, your seller's not attached. Moving it is more of a hassle. But could you get a bit more money? Is it worth it? What's so important the buyer can't live without? It becomes huge. Now, when you start to look at presenting that counteroffer, I love, using this kind of script as far as given the quality of the home and current demand, wouldn't you agree that the counter reflects the fair value? Yeah. It becomes really awesome in that way, because sometimes buyer's agents, they get really caught up as well. They're fighting for this. They see good things. Obviously, you've got a great listing. Like, what does that look like? And so some of these strategies, you're working with either open house, you're working with the buyer's agent, or sometimes you're having the conversation with the seller, and it's a reaffirmation for them. They're making good choices. And that becomes really, really important. It becomes one of those opportunities that we just keep doubling down on. Now, scripts in the shift, this is where we're going to be rolling a lot of these different ones out for you. Leo and I were talking a little bit earlier today, and we're so excited to really make sure that you have what you need, knowing that the market's shifting in different areas. We're seeing inventory differences, but also clients need more from us. They need clear, concise communication. They want to make sure that they've got choice, and they want to make sure that they have full awareness. Well, that's why they called you. You're the professional in the room. And so using these kinds of scripts on price, hey, I'm going to tell people up front, I'm noticing a shift. We're seeing either showings going down, we're seeing interest rate information. It's still strong, but the balance between sellers and buyers is changing. I'm going to keep you updated, but I just want to put it on your radar. It's a lovely, like, hey, just, when you're doing your weekly phone call check-in, it's a great script to use. Now, this next one, in a shifting market, homes that are priced correctly, I'll admit, I've had sellers come in and they want to be overpriced. Okay, well, let's just try it. Let's just try it for a little bit. And what I always love to share with them is like, look, we can go high, but if we go too high, we risk sitting. And then we end up chasing the market downwards. How far are you willing to fall in that chase? And that becomes really important in a shifting market. And I know many of you are like, Holly, you don't understand. We're still in a super hot market, super, seller motivated, multiple offers. That's fantastic. Watch that, because as we continue through the fall and into the winter, even into next year, I'm really hopeful that we're going to continue to see equilibrium or a little bit of aggressiveness for sellers, but demand hasn't quite caught up, and we are starting to see that inventory rise. Folks who bought maybe in 2018, 2019, maybe refied in 2022, they're all of a sudden, they're getting itchy, scratchy. Life is happening to them. When life happens, they got to move. So clear, concise communication. I said it a couple of times. These are my three big principles when you start to think about how we do what we do at a high level, communication wise. Number one, never assume. Never assume you know. Always be asking the question. Like Ted Lasso says, be curious. So never assume that you know what the seller's answer is going to be. I received a text actually this morning, and the agent said, hey, Holly, is your seller willing to, is there a co-broke on this property? And I said, the seller is willing to offer compensation to a buyer's agent. Please put it in the offer, or as your buyer directs you to. Let's go. Show the house, sell it. Let's do this. Never assume, because I don't have permission for my seller to give an exact number. I asked him if he wanted me to. He said no. I said, let's see what happens. Okay. And I know I'm in a market that sometimes you got to be able to do that. It's really, really important. Now, so many of us are doing things via text message, especially, but sometimes by phone call. And maybe we don't have all the sellers on the call at the same time. Please, if you would, after every phone call, do a quick email to both parties. And if it's a family situation where you've got more than two sellers, include everybody in the email. It becomes so important that you're communicating the same thing to everybody at the same time and follow up. Hey, Lucy, it was so great to talk to you. I just wanted to follow up from our phone call so we were all on the same page. XYZ. This is what I need you to know, and this is what you can expect next. It's just that summary of what you discussed and what they can expect from you. And what that does is it cuts Lucy out, or whoever that might be, from being the middleman, because sometimes they get their question answered and they're off with their day. And the other party, the other co-owner, they're like, hey, why haven't I heard from our agent? I'm mad. Like, why haven't I heard from this person? And now they want to fire you because they haven't heard anything. Lucy's talking to them all day long, but they didn't get the answers they needed. So it's an affirmation. Never assume that somebody's sharing everything you've shared. Never assume it's getting as detailed as you need it to. Following up with an email gives you perfect opportunity and segue to set up for next. And also make sure you're following up with facts to all parties at the same time. When you start to look at that clear, concise communication, it's a game changer. So please consider instituting this in your weekly calls, your follow up, everything that you're doing, both with buyers and sellers. It's not just sellers alone. Now, let's talk about more advanced strategies, because as we're shifting in this market and the opportunities that you and I have, it's really important that as we put properties up for sale, I want you to be thinking about price at a wholesale, retail, and retail premium price. When you look at those price ranges, like what is the seller willing to fix, tune up, paint, etc.? They're willing to do nothing. They're like, hey, take it as it is. Cool. Should it go wholesale, or is it just like retail? Right? Retail, not as pretty, not, it's not discount rack, but it's like next step up. Okay. But if they're willing to go all in, they're using like Curbio to come in and maybe remodel a dated kitchen or update a bath, or maybe they're doing landscaping, new flooring, whatever it might be, HVAC, roof, you name it, that becomes really important, because then that wholesale versus resale makes a difference. Also, what's going on in inventory? When you're looking at inventory, are you seeing a rise of inventory in condos, but you're a single family that maybe people were trying to choose between the two? You've got a yard, most of the condos in your area or townhomes don't. You don't have an HOA, they do. So now you're competing on a different level. That becomes an opportunity as a seller, right? Somebody who doesn't need an HOA, doesn't want an HOA, wants to be able to do with their own and room for a dog. Oh my gosh. Those inventory impacts make a difference. Knowing what your competition is, even on the fringe, how you communicate that, how you set your seller up for success, but it also deepens your marketing strategies. And then finally, net proceeds. At the end of the day, your seller's making a business decision to sell. Anytime you and I can arrive with the net proceeds at time of listing, with every offer, with the counter offer, we want to lay out that strategy and then show them in black and white how it impacts their pocketbook. Because buyer may ask for the seller to compensate their agent. Okay, but they didn't ask for anything else. Meanwhile, they're paying full price, but the guy over here came in 25 or 30 grand less, and they're asking for a bunch of repairs. Well, who makes more sense? Full price and commission to a buyer broker? Seller, this makes more sense to your net. Those are honest conversations you and I can have. And then finally, leveraging concessions. What does that look like? Should we provide concessions? Should it be upfront? How do we do this? So it becomes really, really important. And Jill, I see you. Do I have a personal preference to inquire with the list agent about offering a seller comp or not at all? I'll say this. My buyer has hired me to go find them the best house. I have a signed buyer broker with them. If I've got a signed buyer broker, we've talked about how I'm going to get paid. And they may direct me to ask the seller to start. But we've already had that conversation, the buyer and I. If the seller doesn't pay or we can't get a concession, they're coming to the table. But I'm going to do everything I can to go for it. And so my job is to show them all the houses they qualify for, and I'm going to do that. So do I need to call the listing agent? Nah. I'm going to go show the house, and then I'm going to negotiate. And I'm a fierce negotiator that way. And you know what? So are you. So that would be my empowerment to you, is it doesn't matter what the listing agent thinks. Everything changes when it's in writing in front of them. That's when the opportunity for choice begins. So why wait? Put it in writing and let's go. Okay. So tools at your fingertips. We've created this for you, and this is in the EEXP Toolkit for sellers. And so we've got the net proceeds sheet that you can play with, you can download, you can use different prices, all of those things. And then if you are a listing agent and you're getting multiple offers, we've actually got a worksheet that allows you to put in all of those multiple offers and present it in such a way that the seller can see their net offer A, B, and C all lined up. It's a huge game changer. So please be doing that, because it allows the seller to step out of emotion and stay in that business mindset. It's a bit more pragmatic, It allows them to be very focused how they're going forward. So, think about it. These tools are for you at exptoolkit.com /sellers. All right, so let's talk about our buyer brokers, because we are one on any given day. The compensation of the buyer broker is the seller's choice, period. Because remember at the beginning, you and I talked about we were only going to negotiate our compensation, our fee for service, how I show up, and what I get paid. I don't share my commission. I'm just negotiating my fee. But now, seller, let's talk about your business decision and what we want to do. And again, we may see market driven. They absolutely want to offer the price range of the home because of who the buyer may be. Also, they want to be really competitive in their marketplace because they got to get gone. They got to go, right? It's kind of like for a while we had home warranties on everything. We thought that would help sell stuff. Or maybe people were giving away tacos for a year or free pizza with every move in. Whatever it might be, this may help. It may help ease things. And this is where I want to empower you to have the next great conversation with your seller. Leveraging direct compensation is the best way forward. And there's 3 ways to do this. I kind of broke it down into this little thing in my head early. When I go to list, the seller says, you know what? I got to get gone. I know I'm in a market that we're surrounded by, we're just outside a military base. We see a lot of VA loans. I love my veterans, or I love my folks in the military who qualify for VA. I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm offering compensation. So the direct compensation form I will fill out, and I will go ahead and you have my permission to give it to any buyer that comes forward. And we will post in the house, hey, we're willing to offer compensation. I want to do that so we don't have any issues. Cool. Seller, I can do that. I can do that early, and I want to have it out there all the time. And so this is where I really want you to be specific. The script starts like this. The seller has authorized me to share. If I don't have it in writing, y'all, it didn't happen. The seller has authorized me to share. And so on time, so that's early, right? Like that's everybody's getting this amount, no matter who you are. On time could be very much like what Jill asked. Hey, agent calls and says, hey, is your seller willing to compensate a buyer broker? The seller has authorized me to convey, right? And at that point, I can send this over. The seller says, yep, I'll do this for the weekend, or I'll do it to next Tuesday, because we've got an expiration on it. And so it's for that agent and anybody they show on that property. This is what's so cool, you guys. The way we designed this form, it's any agent, any buyer that agent brings. So if I'm an agent with a lot of buyers in a certain price range, getting a seller to sign this makes a huge difference, because I may have 3 buyers lined up to see that exact home this weekend. And now I've got my compensation lined out. It's kind of a cool leverage. Now, I recognize there's some brokerages in the marketplace that are a little leery of this form. I respect that. It's not something they're used to seeing. What I will share is we continue to share this out with real estate associations, realtor associations, other brokerages, just to try and see if we can't adopt something that is fairly similar that everybody can feel comfortable with. Now, finally, I've got the on time, and then I've got on demand. On demand would be if we get an offer and the seller says, you know what, I'm totally willing to offer compensation to a buyer broker. At that time of offer, I can have my seller sign this as part of a counteroffer. Absolutely. Remember, EXP, we don't do broker to broker compensation because we're only negotiating our fee. We want to encourage our sellers to have as many choices as possible. If they would like to offer compensation, we have a tool to do that, and we want to show them how, and we're going to facilitate the ease of making this happen. That's what we do. It's how we show up. It's how we've always shown up, doing the right thing. And so as a result, you've got different options that you can leverage for your seller. We can do it early to everybody at any time. We can do it on time, which means with each showing, or we can do it on demand when it comes in an offer. Seller, it's up to you. What would you like? And this is the form to do it. So guys, I really, as you are looking at your different markets, and I know for all my friends in Florida, we've had a lot of folks who have been nervous about maybe going out because post August 17th, buyer broker went out of the MLS. This is a form that you can overcome that with. Have the conversation with your seller. What would they like to do? And that makes all the difference in the world. All right. So open houses and sign calls. Let's get into this. What I loved is the National Association of Realtors last Thursday, Katie Johnson, NAR's general counsel, actually sent out, they started a consumer advocacy series to basically explain, consumers, this is what you need to know. So if a consumer walks into the open house, they don't have to sign anything because the agent there should be on behalf of the seller, i.e. works for the company. So they don't need to sign a buyer broker. And this is what I will say to all of you. Please don't have them sign a buyer broker. Have the conversation, talk to them, see what their needs are. And if they start making noises like, wow, we're not represented, we love this house, man, we'd really like to make an offer, can you tell us about it? That becomes that moment where you go, do I want to represent you? Or do you want to go get representation yourself? Those are options. Now, the gray area, and this is kind of my litmus test, if you will, is are you being more than they can Google, right? Can they Google certain things? Can they Google the school district? Can they Google the square footage? All of those, if they can, give them that information. That's cool. The minute you start talking to them about strategy and negotiating, or you start talking about pricing on the house, pulling a CMA, preparing other properties for them to go see, you step into that gray area, which becomes working with. And the minute you go there, you probably should have a signed buyer broker. So please be thoughtful as you go forward, because that open house, sign call, you're there on behalf of the seller. You absolutely do not need that buyer to sign a buyer broker. Now, transparency says, hey, let them know you work for the seller. Like that's good practice. I'm here on behalf of the seller, but are you interested in representation? What's important to you? And they may tell you, and you can have a chat about it. And if they go, we would like representation, you can say, I'd love to interview for the job. And when you're ready, these are things you would sign. What would you like to know? I can send you my buyer listing kit or my buyer packet. We can talk, I'd set up meet you for coffee later. What would you like? That's when you could sign the buyer broker. You don't have to do it in the open house. I hope that helps, because I know people get a little confused. Now, Kathleen, I see your question and I love this. Why would I want to push my buyer to another agent? Why can't I write up the transaction? Look, this is the deal. You absolutely may. If a buyer comes in, contacts you via sign or through your open house, you're there on behalf of the seller. And so at that point, you can decide if you want to step into dual agency. One, will your seller, do they agree to it? Two, is it allowed in your state, of course? And if you do, and you're making all the proper disclosures, you need a signed buyer broker. Okay. Do you have to do that? Can the buyer be unrepresented? Yeah. But it all depends on how you disclose, how you give choice, and how you reaffirm everything in writing. So it becomes really, really important. Now, I also see in your question that you're a transaction broker. That's totally cool. Slightly different set of rules. And I know I'm getting to talk to folks in all 50 states, and everybody's got just a little bit of a different flavor of vanilla. That's cool. What I want you to do, Kathleen, is please reach out to your broker team, and they can leverage you through, what it looks like taking care of an agent or taking care of a buyer as a transaction broker. So you are so spot on with your paperwork, you don't miss a thing. It's so important in this new chapter that we're all in, how we give choice to our clients, how we take care of them at the highest level. So I'm going to run through a couple of common questions as we wrap up our time here together. It makes a difference, because if you and I are doing this and we're seeking to do the right thing, that's our North Star, right? How do we create transparency for our clients, for the consumer? How do we make sure that they have choice in everything that we do? And that's going to be the biggest litmus test out of all of this. And I have no doubt you're going to do it at a really high level. All right. So may I advertise buyer broker compensation on a flyer in the listing? Short answer is yeah. If your seller authorizes you and they say, we got to get gone, please, please, please put what we're willing to offer. Okay. It can be on a flyer in the house for sure. Can I put the seller is willing to offer compensation in the public remarks in MLS? No. You may not put compensation or anything of the like in the public remarks. What you may say, very specifically, what you may say is the seller is open to concessions, and only that may be in the public remarks. You can't put that in private. May I use we love buyer brokers as a sign writer? Sure, if your seller wants that, of course. It's kind of like the home warranty, or the sign writer, I'm bigger than I look, whatever it might be. If your seller wants it, go for it. Just get authorization in writing is the best practice. Is my seller able to tell agents that show the home that the seller will pay? Well, of course, it's their house. They're willing to do that for sure. Is my seller required to offer compensation to a buyer broker? That answer is no, they are not required. But as we've kind of talked about all through today, it's really important that you and I give them choice, and educated choice. What does it look like in this time as the market continues to shift? What should they know? What should they see? What's important to helping them get their house sold? Could it make a difference? Can my seller pay less than is requested in the contract? The short answer is yes, absolutely. It's all in negotiation. So it becomes really important that you look at that net sheet with them and help them make good, educated guesses. Should I get a copy of the buyer broker agreement? In my opinion, no. It doesn't matter. Because if you're asking for the buyer broker, are you giving them a copy of your listing agreement? And the answer on that one is no as well. So the buyer broker is irrelevant. That's a personal services contract between the buyer and the buyer's agent. At the end of the day, we're going to negotiate whatever is in the contract, and everything else, like, it's not my job to verify they have a buyer broker. It's not my job to verify what that amount is, because we're negotiating what's in the contract, what my seller's willing to pay or not, and we go from there. I love this question. Can I place a keychain in the Supra or iBox that says 3%? Please don't. Just don't. The iBox is actually comes from the multiple listing service. And because it comes from the multiple listing service, it's part of the MLS, and you'd be in violation of MLS rules. So just don't. It's a great way to get fined. Now, this is what's interesting. In conference that I was sitting in, California Regional MLS had over 8,000 listings entered in the last 15 days or so. Only 8 had violations. So y'all are doing a great job. It's all about choice. This is all about taking care of our clients. And the more that you educate, the more that you show up with thoughtful information, data, statistics to help them make a good, educated guess, that's the market we're in. As a professional rising to the top, your focus and how you take care of your clients makes all the difference. Clear, concise communication, choice, and the ability to walk them through what to expect next. That's how you're going to build your business as we look through 2024 and into 2025. And EXP, we are so excited to build it with you. So we've got tools at your fingertips, the exptoolkit.com/sellers. Please check it out. If there's something more you need, please reach out. I'm active on Workplace, any of your state brokers. We are so happy to support you in any way possible. And this is what I want you to know. At EXPCon, we're going to be doing lots of training around scripts, best practices, ways to overcome challenges in the market, representing both buyers and sellers. We've got it all. Please keep coming back. We've got you, and we're going to help you build your business for this year and beyond. Thank you all.